Thank you. So I'm delighted to be the last oral presenter of the day. Is there beer at the poetry session? Oh, okay, there's beer at the poetry session, so I'm the last thing holding you from your beer, but have patience with me, we'll get through this. So I had to cut this down a little bit. I had pretty ambitious goals when I set in my title, and then the reality of presenting in 20 minutes, I had to cut down what I was going to say. So we're just going to talk about my IPM project I did in 2013 and then 2014. So prior to 2011, life in the Pacific Northwest in terms of potato insect management was relatively easy. We had this nice handbook that's put together by Andy Jensen, Alan Schreiber, Sylvia Rondon, and Eric Wenninger. And so when crop consultants or growers come up with an insect test, they can pop this thing open and figure out what to do. And then we had potato psyllids come in. And this complicated everybody's life, including my own. So we take this table. This is taken from their publication. I didn't slide it down here. Anyways, so before it was pretty easy, and now we have to throw this psyllid thing into the mix. So it really complicates life. And psyllids, it's an unknown in the Pacific Northwest in 2011. So in potatoes in Washington, we have a pretty big pest spectrum. We have 10 or more possible pests in the field at any one time. So we're not just dealing with one thing. I work in onions too, and it's my favorite crop because we have onions, and that's it. It's really easy. And as we all know, pests are sporadic, and somewhat is an understatement. They're very unpredictable in nature. So not all pests can be controlled with a single mode of action. So and we have no more silver bullets. There's no Chemic and Monitor available. Those used to be favorites of growers and consultants because we could start out everything fresh, so to speak. There was a lot of pressure in 2012 and 2013 in Pacific Northwest that something should always be done to control potato psyllid. A lot of pressure to the growers from the buyers of potatoes. So as a result, it costs more money to control insects and grow potatoes. And then we get weird things like this. We get stink bugs coming in. So these are the kinds of things I deal with on a daily basis. We have growers concerned about potato psyllids and aphids, and then we get these crazy stink bugs that come into potato fields and do this kind of swarm. I'm not sure what they're doing there, but they're appearing in large numbers. So there's a lot of things that come up for the growers and consultants. And then you get plants like this. And like Sylvia talked about earlier, a few years ago we would have assumed that was DLTVA, and we would have moved on with life, and now we have to consider other things. So I set up this project in 2012 to perform in 2013, and basically to evaluate season-long insect management programs in potatoes. So as I mentioned previously, potatoes have a number of different pest threats during the season, and they can impact crop yield and quality. And producers and consultants are routinely having to make decisions for pest control that target one or more pests in the field, with consideration for the cost of the products that they use and the effect of non-target organisms. So the most common question that I get in the summer to my office is not what works, but when and how to use it in regard to the complete insect pest spectrum. So it's not I have psyllids or I have aphids. I think I have psyllids. I know I have leafhoppers. What do I do now? That's a very common type of question. So the objective of this project was to evaluate insecticide management techniques based on pest densities and insect thresholds in season-long management programs, and then at the end of the season go in and harvest those tubers and look at the yield and quality that we get. Because I can get up here and talk about dead insects, and it makes me feel good that we got results, but for the grower at the end of the day, did you have a good yield, did you have good quality, did you make money? It matters. So we used Ranger russet potatoes for these experiments under standard growing practices. We used a Latin square design with 4 treatments for 4 reps, 6 row by 30-foot plots, and we performed insect sampling on the outer 4 rows. Because we sample a lot, we beat the heck out of our potatoes. So we have to leave 2 rows in the middle that we can actually get decent yield and quality on. And this is kind of what the plots look like during the growing season. It's kind of hard to see in here, but we had a big Colorado potato population in this field. So this is how that compilates. So for evaluations, our target pests, like I said, we have a lot of pests that are not key pests that growers consider pests. but our targets here were Colorado potato beetle, aphids. Of course, psyllids were kind of our key target during these last 2 seasons. Leafhoppers, caterpillars, and then, of course, spider mites, which is kind of a unique problem, I think, in the Pacific Northwest, spider mite problem with potatoes. We did sampling with sticky traps. We used an Allen back or an inverted leaf blower. We did a lot of leaf sampling, and then we did visual observation. At the end of the season, we measured yield, size profile, and then internal defects. And that came from a 2-row by 20-foot cross section. And then basically we performed a cost and benefit analysis of the treatment. Did applying these treatments save you money? Did you make more money from doing this? These are the 4 treatments that I had laid out. We had an untreated. We had a program that I called a risk-averse program, which I think is what a lot of growers were doing in 2012 and somewhat in 2013. We used a neonicotinoid at planting, and we did applications based when pests were detected in the region, not necessarily when they were detected in our field or our plots, but just when they showed up in the region. And that was, of course, similar to our target there. We had an inexpensive choice program where we did no insecticide at planting, and the applications were made based on insect counts in the plot using the least expensive control option. Because that's always the second part of the question. What worked, and now how much did it cost? How much does it cost? I mean, they don't always ask me that. They, of course, go from the distributors, but that always plays a role in the decision that's made. And then we had the last program called the Most Effective Choice Program, where we used the neonicotinoid of planting, and applications were made based on insect counts in the plots, using the best labeled product from my experience, and then regardless of the cost of the product. Okay. And then this is kind of jumping to the end right away here. This is what we did for those plots. So this is the data applied here across the top, and then here's the untreated, of course. The risk-averse program had Cruiser Max at planting, followed by 2 applications of Moveno. You guys can read as well as I can. And then it's the last column here is the total product cost per acre for that program. So the risk-averse program, pretty darn expensive, $360 an acre. The inexpensive choice program, much fewer insecticides. You see several pyrethroids in there, and very inexpensive, $85 per acre. The most effective choice program had a neonicot planting, and then of course both these programs are based on pest densities, and we spent about $210 per acre in terms of product cost. Okay. And now I'm going to get into some convoluted slides. So these are season totals from averages from the plots. We have the different treatments are separated here. So we have the untreated, the risk-averse program, inexpensive choice program, and the most effective choice program here. And these are our psyllid counts. There's adults on leaf, doesn't show up here because we didn't find any that way. The blue bar is nymph psyllids collected on leaf samples, and those were 20 leaves per plot. The red bars are adult psyllids from vacuum samples, and then the purple bars are adults collected from sticky cards. So these are season totals, so they're not real high numbers. And basically, when it comes to the yellow cards, we see no differences there statistically because we're just measuring kind of what's moving into the plot. We're not measuring efficacy there. We see some differences on nymphs and basically relatively low numbers in our basically, the inexpensive choice program, we had quite a few psyllid nymphs in that plot, and you'll see why here in a little bit. But these are the season totals, just wanted to give you an idea of what we were finding out there. This is a graphic by date here on the x-axis, and then the number per card, and these are adult psyllids from our plots here. One thing, the reason I showed this on here, of course, there's no difference in the treatments here. But we had our small research farm there in Pasco. We have about 1.5 acres of potatoes, and there was about 150 acres of commercial potatoes about a mile away. And they were early potatoes. They were harvested the second week of July, I think. And you see that after those potatoes were desiccated and harvested, our psyllid numbers go up dramatically. So we had pretty decent pest pressure as a result of having that commercial field nearby. This graphic is looking at, again, treatments are in different colors here, untreated in green, risky versus blue, inexpensive choice in red, and most effective in purple. And these are the number of nymph psyllids per plot throughout the season. So you see the numbers, again, relatively low, and they start to go up a little bit in July and come back down, and then the end of August, they shoot up pretty high. And, of course, like I said, we had a big influx of adults earlier. Our potatoes are still green and pretty happy. Interestingly enough, you see a big crash in the untreated, the risk averse, and the most effective choice program plots. So that was pretty alarming if you looked at all the data and didn't go out into the field. And we had pretty extensive Colorado potato beetle damage in our untreated check plots, so we didn't have any polling there. So it's a good thing that I actually go to the farm once in a while, because if I didn't go to our research farm, then I'd be looking back at this going, oh crap, what happened here? So basically no foliage left out there. The potato psyllids aren't doing so well out there. Interestingly enough, in the inexpensive choice program, there was a good comment earlier about pyrethroid use. So a lot of times we like to do things that we don't want growers to do. So the repeated pyrethroid use flared the psyllids in our inexpensive choice plots. And basically those stayed high until we came back in with an Agrimex application, not the end of August, but the first part of September. So further evidence, pyrethroids for psyllid control are not a good idea. They're inexpensive. It's very tempting to use them because of the cost of them, but not effective for potato psyllids. This is just kind of a summary of other pests that we had in the plots, just to kind of point out. We had relatively overall low pest pressure. We have Colorado potato beetles here in green. There were some differences there. Of course, we had pretty high Colorado potato beetle predation on our untreated check plots and in our inexpensive choice program. We didn't have a neonicotinoid at planting, so the Colorado potato beetles came in there and just kind of kept reproducing. We did knock them down a little bit with the pyrethroid. Aphid numbers were relatively low, no statistical differences there. And again, leafhopper numbers were very low there, and no statistical differences with those. This is what I call a confusogram. Lines going everywhere, colored lines. So this is, again, in these IPM plots, and these are aphids per leaf, a number of aphids per leaf in samples, and these are wingless aphids. And basically, the reason I threw this up there, we got a kind of an interesting result down here, where the aphid numbers peaked up in most of the plots, and we had a timely application of the fill that really knocked our aphid numbers down pretty good. So, not much to say on that. Not a lot of aphid pressure, not a lot of differences there. Okay, so I threw up my kind of summary insect slides. I threw up my confusogram. So now we're going to talk about what really matters. So we're going to go out and harvest these things. So basically, at the end of the season, we go in and we dig up these sections and bag them, and then we take them into our horticulture. Dr. Mark Pavic has a nice grading machine at the hotel station. He lets us run our tubers through there, at least some of them. And then he's got a newer computer than this now. I take this off of his website. I wish Mark was here, so I could give him a bad time about that 1980s computer. And basically, Mark runs it through and does a simulated processing contract. So a lot of our potatoes are processed. So Mark takes the data from the grading and runs it through a process contract for us. So we have the green bars are total yield in tons per acre. The blue bars are market yield, and then the red bars are market number one. So all the growers in the room know that you're going to get paid different for the different market rates. So I'm not going to try to explain that because I understand it, but Mark does due to the data. So there are no statistically significant differences here, but there's some pretty interesting numeric trends where our more effective insecticide programs did show a little bit of an increase in yield, but we had a little bit of variability there, and the statistics didn't work out like I hoped they would. Basically, the gross return in terms of dollars per acre to the grower, you can see here the untreated was a little less than $4,000 per acre. And with the different insecticide programs, again, it's not statistically significant, but we saw a numeric increase in yield, more so with the risk-averse and most effective choice programs. So to kind of further take this a little bit further, we basically tried to do, we have the insecticide cost in here for these different programs, and we subtracted out, we wanted to look at the gross increase over the untreated check in terms of dollars per acre after taking out the insecticide cost. So our inexpensive choice program increased returns about $300 per acre to the grower, the risk-averse program about $800 per acre, and the most effective choice program about $1,100 per acre. So again, not statistically different here, they're numerically different, interesting trends, illustrating that it looks like it is important to use effective insecticides, even under relatively low insect pressure. We did cut a bunch of tubers and do a bunch of fry tests, and basically we had no zebras yet. So not much to say on that. And we did complete the same trial again in 2014. I'm just now summarizing the data. I didn't share that today, but much lower pest pressure. And we did see some differences in yield and quality and payout, and not as the numbers aren't as different as they are from the 2013 trial. So kind of to boil it down, I feel like the yellow sticky cards, our growers are real comfortable with yellow sticky cards. We use them on our sampling network, and it seems to be a really good indicator of presence of psyllids in the neighborhood. Leaf samples are a good indicator from my perspective of product efficacy. Pyrethroids exclusively are not a good management strategy, and they seem to flare many pests. When we do a lot of different insect trials, we bring pyrethroids in to cause problems. But this data and others show that that's not a good management strategy. In the Pacific Northwest, I think neonicotinoids are a good strategy for Colorado potato beetle and early season aphid control. Very effective for us. I think there's more work that's needed on this project. We've got some interesting trends that I'd like to see to make some tweaks and see what we can get with it. And spending more money on insecticide does not always increase profitability for the grower. But choosing the right one probably does. Okay, so I've got some thoughts on improvement, things that we're going to change. I won't go into that. I don't need to go over this today, but this is a slide I always throw up there. When we're making all these applications, mode of action is really important in terms of using management. So it's 2 minutes, so what does that mean? You did the same thing to Sylvia. I should have known. Yeah, I'm not going to hurry though. So I've got my do's and don'ts up here that I like to throw up there. So I think a neonic, again, at planting is a good idea. Know your IRAC codes and insecticide modes of action. For most of our insect pests, it's really important to be out in the field frequently and monitoring. That's how you're going to have your best choice, your best chance of keeping those pest numbers down. Remember surfactants and buffering. Really important with insecticides, especially if you're running things. We run a lot of things through the water. And pH is really important for a lot of insecticides, so if you don't pay attention to those things, that's where you kind of run into failure. And remember the factors that influence insect pressure: seasonality, temperature, previous chemical applications, and really with a lot of these pests, nearby host crops. We grow a lot of crops in the basin, have a lot of different things going out there, so it's really important to pay attention to what's going on the other side of the fence. Don't use a foliar neonicotinoid if you use one at planting. So I like to remind people this includes package mixes. A lot of package mixes have pyrethroids and neonics in them. We need to pay attention to that. And I don't think calendar-based spray programs are a good idea. And pyrethroids, again, not a good management strategy. Sometimes late in the season there's a fit, but you have to be careful about what's going on in the environment. If you can see like for potato tuber moth, maybe right at the end of the season, the pyrethroid might be a good idea. Okay. Oh. And that's, I had to take a picture. I took a picture of my technician. He just loves killing potato psyllids, so anyway, that's gone. He does a lot of work on the farm, and funding was provided by the Washington State Commission on Pesticide Registration, Washington State Potato Commission, and then I've got a lot of other people that support the work that I do. So.